All right. Welcome to CSS Transitions, Transforms, and Animations. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to use transitions, use transforms, use animations. All three of these are relatively new in CSS. How do you think we did this shit before? We've been able to animate things in the web for a sec. How did we do all this before? JavaScript. And like to this day, there's still a lot of people that would prefer to use that because you have the power of variables and loops and all that kind of stuff. A few years ago, as part of CSS3, we got access to these things, which made it so we didn't have to have JavaScript too concerned with presentational things like transitions, transforms, and animations. And by and large, we can do most things, most like utility kinds of animation tasks with these three tools. But there's some limitations on it. And the first one that you'll run into is not every CSS property is what we call continuously variable. So something that's continuously variable, anything where you're saying like a percent, because I can vary between the different percents, right? What's an example of something that's not continuously variable?
Like a pixel, like a 16 font?
Nope. Pixels are, because I can continuously vary between those. Look it up. Not every property is variable. Anybody find an example of something that's not continuously variable? There's one of them. Display isn't continuously variable. There's no like scale between block and inline. Something can't be half block. The border, yeah, like the solid, dotted, dash, that kind of stuff is not.
Sure.
The other two parts are.
Yeah.
Colors are, sizes are.
Yeah.
Any other ones that aren't continuously variable?
Positioning ones unjustified.
Yep. Can't position stuff. There's no like half absolute, half relative. This might relate to the thing Carl brought up earlier. Visibility is not continuously variable. It either is or it isn't. Anybody know how we can work around that? Because we can't fade things in and fade things out.
Change the color and opacity.
Opacity. So opacity is how we get around that. So, and this is the case with basically all of these. If you want it to have some kind of smooth animation, it has to be continuously variable. Otherwise, none of this works. And you'll get this confusing thing where something will be not visible and then it will be, but it won't fade in, fade out. As you can still use those properties in these things, they just don't continuously vary. But yeah, anything with a size, anything with a color, all those are continuously variable. Cool, let's start with transitions. Actually, before we do that, let's talk about the difference between these. So when we talk about transitions, what is that? What's a transition? Yep. So these are usually like from a couple things. From hovering, it's a pretty easy one. If you have a new style that you want to apply on hover, we know how to do that. You add a hover pseudo selector and you have whatever you want the new style to be. If it's continuously variable and you want it to gradually make that change, then you can add a transition to the element and it'll make that smoother. Also, adding and removing classes. We can make something gradually happen if we're dynamically applying classes. That's when we do transitions. Inside your transition, you might do a transform. What's a transform?
Scale, rotation, translation.
Rotate, scale. Scale is size, so you can make something smaller or bigger. Translate is moving, if you want to go over to left or right or whatever. And good gravy, do we have a lot of transforms? Good gravy. Ones that are pretty common, skew, that like does an X and a Y unevenly. Oh, this is kind of cool. You can change the perspective. So you have, see it, everything on the web is 2D, right? Well, we can change the perspective so we treat it like it's 3D and now we're looking at it at an angle. So you could even have something where like I have this card and when I hover over it, I want it to kind of have a different perspective, like rotate back into the axis a little bit. It's kind of a common one.
So you're like one of those card flipping things where it shows the back?
Yep, exactly. Look at the back of it. Yeah, we can do all kinds of stuff.
What's the scale 3D one? Or that's just doing the 3 dimensions.
Correct.
Ones. Oh, never mind.
Yeah, you can make it, move it forward and back and stuff also. Cool. And then an animation is a lot like a transition. But we get to pick steps. We can say 25% of the way through the animation, I want it to be this color, and then halfway I want it to be this color, and then 3/4 of the way through I want it to be this color, and when it finishes I want it to be this color. So you get a lot of very fine-grained control. You can also have it do something like, I want it to exponentially become this. Transitions are simple. It's just like a mathematical, like even linear translation. Actually, we can even play with that a little bit. But animation, very fine-grained control. We can also do things like, all right, while I'm hovering over this, I want it to go through these steps and keep going through them. I want it to go wee, wah, wee, wah, wee, wah. So we can make stuff repeat. And this is kind of a neat thing about animations. Even without something like Sass, animations are all reusable. You define an animation and then you apply it to a rule. And what's kind of neat about that is all the rules can do different speeds for the same animation. All right, so that's the difference between these. Let's do some transitions. So what I want you to do is make an HTML document, and we're going to do these with, let's start with just a box. So you're going to make a div in your body, and you're going to attach a style sheet to it, and that style sheet is going to set explicit dimensions, like 200 pixels by 200 pixels. Let's get that far. We'll take it from there. All right, so when you're done, you should have something that looks kind of like this. I flex it into the center. You can if you want. Cool. Give me a thumbs up if this is working.
What you got, John?
Okay, cool. Beautiful. So, we want to transform this on hover. I'm going to change the color from red to blue. So normally I would do that by copying this over, adding the hover pseudo class, and making that RGB 240. So when I hover over it, it changes colors. If I want it to continuously change from red to blue, check this shit out. On the original box, I say transition, background color, and then how long I want it to take in seconds. I want to take 2S. And now, gradually becomes blue.
And it even does the transition on the way back.
Correct. Questions about transitions?
If you're doing it from, say, like a class to class change
Mhm.
and not using hover, do you need to transition on both those classes? So it goes to, no? Okay.
Another thing you can do, let's say I have more than one thing. For example, let's say I want to transform it. And say when I hover, I want there to be a transform. I want it to scale to twice as big. Well, it does the blue gradually, but it doesn't do the transform gradually. What the fuck? So you can put more than one property on here. I think you can even give them different lengths. So if I say, I think it's comma, transform, I want transforms to take 3 seconds. So it finishes the color transition before it even does the scale one. So you can do different ones for that. If you want every single transition to take the same amount of time, all. Let's say 0.2 seconds. Let's be zippy about this. Yeah. I'd mentioned that transitions are linear. It's not all the way true. So there are, yeah, so those are called easings. Easings look like this. So you say, for every amount of input, how much output do you get? And so like, an ease in starts slow and then goes fast. Ease out starts fast and then just kind of like slides into home. And then there's like elastic ones, these bounce. They go boom. You get a couple of them available just for free in CSS. Oh, thank you for history hijacking me. Fuck you. CSS easings. And then this is for stuff that is more complicated. You use cubic Bezier, which allows you to like define in a little bit more detail what the things are. Is ease in, ease out the only ones we get for free? Transition timing property. There we go. So let's do ease in out. Has a little bit more personality to it. And in general, things with easings on them feel more natural. Linear ones, like if we just make that linear, that feels like decidedly unnatural. Sometimes that's what you want. But if you want it to feel human and normal, you put some easing on it, all of a sudden, it's very subtle, but it gets just a little bit of personality to it. Let's make it longer.
How do you get those extra ones?
JavaScript.
Yeah.
or just program them with cubic Bezier.
Yeah.
So if we do something like that, whatever that one was.
Your battery's gone.
Yep, I'm gonna go get my charger. All right, let's take 5 minutes, just play around with that. Try some stuff. See what works, see what doesn't work. Go. Try to make something disappear. Class dot. All right, this is my rotating puppy. Cool. So, questions about transitions and transforms. All right, choose some animations. So, syntax for animations. CSS animations. Looks like this. You define some keyframes, give them a name, and then from and to are keywords. We can also do percentages, what we're saying, defining the different steps of the animation. From and to is just beginning and end. And then to use it, we say animation name, or there's a shorthand that's just animation. We say the name of the keyframes we define, and we can also define seconds, whether it repeats, that kind of thing. So let's say I want the box. So what I'm going to do, I want to make my box like move around, kind of like wiggle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a box inside the box. box, inner box. So inner box or outer box is going to keep all this stuff. I'm going to take the hover off, take the transition off, and then inner box. Oh, the other thing is I'm going to make this position relative. I'm going to make this position absolute. Okay, CSS Refresher. What do these two things do? Not quite.
So inner box position absolute, it cannot move within the outer box. It's where it's placed, it cannot move from there.
Not quite.
The frame of reference for one box and for the other.
The frame of reference. That's what we want. So if this is the page, I have positioned that box here, just like I did before, but then I have a box inside of it also that I want to be able to move relative to this outer box. So relative makes this the point of reference. Absolute makes it absolutely positioned relative to that box. So I can use things like left, right, up and down, or top and bottom, I mean, to move that relative to this one. So I'm going to make the height and width on this one 100%. That's really the thing that has the background color. And oops. It's taken over. Get rid of that buddy. Sorry, buddy. Jane, stop this crazy thing. Oops, because I just flipped him around. That'll do it. There we go. That's more what I'm looking for. So I can give the outer box a color. Say I make that one blue. So I don't see it because they're right on top of each other. But since this is absolutely positioned, I can do something like left 10 pixels. And now it's 10 pixels off of that point of reference. So what I want to do is animate this so that it kind of bounces around a little bit. I'm going to call that atom. So at keyframes, atom. And we get a couple cool keywords we can use. We can do from and to. We can also define steps in between those. And each one of those, we get to apply different rules. So I'll say from left 10 pixels to left negative 20 pixels. That's it, right? Yeah. And I'll say at 25%, no colon. On any of these? Yeah, on any of these. No, no colon. %, I want it to be 0. And at 50%, I want it to be 10 again. And then at 75%, I want it to be negative 40. And then I'll just do these for all of them. Top. This one's going to be bottom. And this one them and make these weirder. All right, cool. So I have some keyframes defined that should move this around. Just to be clever about it, I'm also going to change the opacity since it has that background color. Opacities are 0 to 1. So I'm going to start at like a 0.7, and we'll just change this at every step also. And now that I have that animation defined, how about I use it? So on the inner box, I'm going to say animation, atom, and I can specify the time that that entire animation should take. So I'm going to make it 1 second. Cool. So it does it once. If I want it to repeat, I can say infinite. Now it just keeps looping. And since it starts in a different place than it ends, it kind of has that jump. So you can also make it alternate. So that it starts at the from, goes to the to, goes to the to, goes to the from. I'm going to make these weirder. Make that 100. This is 20. This is negative 20. This is 50. This is 10. This is 70. Negative 40. 60. And then 80. Cool. And then I'm going to make it really fast. Kind of cool. That's animations. We can also do practical stuff like sliding like a menu in or something like that, but that's animations. Questions about that?
Before you had alternate and infinite,
Yeah,
what came after the time?
it was just infinite, I think. Yeah, the shorthand animation shorthand CSS. You can also do easings on them. Looks like that. I can't remember if this is the case with animations. It is the case with the 3D transforms. It also turns on the graphics card. So there's a lot, like a common performance hack in CSS is you do transform 3D translate or something and then set it to nothing, but it still triggers the graphics card to turn on, and so you get that benefit for all of your CSS. What else? Cool, let's take 5 minutes. You make an animation. Can't use this one, it's mine. I got alternate and infinite backwards. You gotta tell it how many seconds of execute. With my really cool.
How do you get it to trigger off an event? What would be the?
So if you wanted to trigger that off an event,
How
who
would,
kn-
yeah, how would we get around it? Yeah.
how would we do that? Well, we want to do this when an event fires. The thing successfully came back, whatever. What are we doing? Class. And now just toggle that class whenever you want the animation. Cool, and then you can't be bothered to fucking have this in one file or whatever. In Sass, it would be @mixin Adam. And you'd say something like include Adam. Now you can put those in whatever files you want.
Can you make, oh, I guess the keyframe is a mix-in, so.
It's not a mix-in, it's a
like a similarity kind of thing.
kinda. Except it's built into CSS.
Yeah, okay. That's what I wanted was.
It uses the keyframes directive, I think is the correct term.
Okay.
Awesome. What else you want to know? It's a very different lesson. Put as many animations on it as possible. It's on my guest book. Under construction.
Don't take up PRCs and take notes.
Center everything.
Everything is one.
Makes it look great. All right. That's it. Thank you.